Hello and welcome to my guide on drawing and constructing the head. I wanted to make this prequel to my Head Start drawing guide because even when you have a good understanding of painting and rendering, there's only so much you can add to a poorly constructed drawing. And so, I believe I said this in the guide, but drawing and proper construction is the crux of any good artwork. And today I would like to go over how to properly construct the head, understanding the primary foundational blocks which will help you in drawing and manipulating the head, and learning how to utilize primary shapes and think in 3D. I'll also cover the Loomis method, and then we'll move on to sketching and line art techniques that I use and how to construct the head from any angle. And finally we'll get to how to get the likeness of the character or person we're drawing. So let's get into it. And so to start off with, we want to break down this very complex structure that is the face into something much more simpler, that is a cube, because it is one of the most important shapes when it comes to understanding how to draw the head. And honestly, just about anything you want to draw in perspective, the head can be broken down into a three-dimensional object in perspective. So if you learn how to draw a cube, or you understand how to draw a cube well, you can build a solid head from just about any angle. The human head isn't a perfect sphere. It has flat planes and structure. So if we think about the head as a simplified box, then it suddenly becomes much easier to position it, to rotate it in space, and to also keep our proportions in check. For example, this head here may look like a flat two-dimensional shape, but it actually isn't. There is a separation between the side of the head from the temple to the front of the head, and actually made this 2D square to throw some of you off. But if you think about that separation between the temple and the front of the head, you can give it depth going this way. And even just a side or profile view like this will end up looking more interesting than if everything were flat. This to here, there's a wraparound. Here to here, there's a wraparound. But even though the head may look complicated, if we break it down into simple, manageable forms, then it will be much more easier to build it back up. And that is what we'll be covering more of today. A simple trick to get away from drawing flat heads is to try to show as many planes as possible from the perspective that we're looking at. The head has multiple planes, and from a certain angle or perspective, you can only show so many. Right here, for example, we're seeing the front plane, the side plane, and the top plane of the cube. Translated to the head, that will be the front of the face, the side showing the temple and ear, and the top of the plane, in this case his hair, is covering it. So if we try to show as much plane as possible from the perspective that we're looking at the head at, then our head drawings won't look flat and like a lifeless two-dimensional cartoon, unless that's what you're going for. And even then, there's still a way you can show the front and side plane of the head without it looking horrible. Part of drawing a cube or positioning a head in a cube is understanding how to draw a cube in perspective. When we know how to sketch a cube in perspective, meaning all sides will converge towards a vanishing point, then this will help us in placing the head accurately in space. One of the hardest things about drawing a head is getting the angle right, and positioning the head inside a cube will make it much easier, because if you tilt a cube forward, backward, or to the side, then you understand that all the planes facing or all the parts of the cube that will represent the planes of the face will also face those angles, and then we'll immediately understand how the head should follow, and especially when it comes to things like foreshortening or drawing an extreme angle. Right here, for example, this is a low shot, but the cube is also rotated a bit towards my right. So if we see that we are looking at this cube a bit from the bottom, and off to the side a little bit, we will know that we need to represent and show the side plane of the head and also the front plane. Right here is the brow line, and it will convert to the same vanishing point as the top and bottom of this cube. The center line will go right here, and then attach the jaw. We also want to see a bit, since we are looking at this from the bottom, we'll see a bit of underside of the chin. The neck will go right here, and we'll just complete it. We won't see as much of the forehead, of the top of the head, and just understanding how to position a box in perspective will make adding a head much easier, because you just have to follow the guidelines that have already been placed by the cube and then just add the head on top. I'll also go a bit into the proportions of the head so that you can understand where to put those proportions a little bit later on. Here's what we can do to get better at constructing cubes and placing heads inside them. The first things first, depends on where you are on your perspective journey, is get better at drawing in 1-point perspective. So depending on where you are on your perspective journey, this might be easy for you, or you can just skip this altogether. But if you've been putting off drawing in perspective, this is really the time. Like, this is your sign to get into drawing in perspective, because everything going forward will just involve perspective drawing. And this is something that I also skipped, and it came back to haunt me heavily, because I would rely too much on references. And so this year, this is one of my goals. I'm trying to get into more imaginative drawing and learning how to construct poses from memory. But if you're still a beginner, start with 1-point perspective. The goal is to show at least 2 planes of a box, and then if you've gotten past that, you can draw in 2-point perspective with grades. And same thing as before, if you've passed this or you're comfortable drawing in 2-point perspective, I would recommend that you draw in 2-point perspective, but without the grades set up. And then if you've graduated beyond 1 and 2-point perspective, this is the, I guess, difficult for me, but this is the part where you learn to think in 3D, and this is easily the most important part of drawing boxes and thinking about 3D. So what we want to do is start off with a square or a rectangle, and this is where you really get your brain working, because right here the exercise is to think of this box as a 2-dimensional object which we want to convert to a 3-dimensional object. So we do that by rotating it in space. So if this is the front of the box and we want to tilt it downward just a little bit, it should look something like this. We can still see the front of the box, but then we will also see the top of the box, meaning that we are looking down at the box. Same thing applies for if we want to look up at the box. We'll still see the top of the box, and then we'll see a bit of the bottom of the box. and same thing goes for the side and the side. And then eventually when we're past this, we will all four corners slightly tilted, and then we can take it a step further and pick one of the quadrants and try to rotate it even more. So as you can see here, if this is my front plane and this is my top plane, the more we rotate and tilt this box, the less of the front plane we will see, until eventually, if we keep going, the front plane will get smaller and smaller to the point where we will only see the top plane. So this is something that you can practice and will give you more of an idea and understanding of how to rotate boxes in 3D. And if you get good at drawing and rotating the four quadrants, so north, south, east and west, you can then try your hand at going for a 3/4 rotation. And this is a bit more advanced because what we're going to do here is show a combination of these two boxes. So we'll be tilting it to a bit to the left and also a bit upward. So what that should look like is seeing a bit of the bottom plane and of the side plane. So we're not only just seeing the bottom plane like we are here, or the front plane like we are here, or just the side plane, but we're seeing three planes: the front plane, the side plane, and the bottom plane. Now, this is where we want to be. This is the starting point for learning how to construct and rotate boxes in 3D intuitively. If we get good at this, let me also do another example here. So same thing here, and then we'll do another one here. We're seeing the top plane, the side plane, and the front plane. Same thing here. You get the point. So when we get good at doing this, this is when we graduate to here of stacking boxes together in space and overlapping them. Now imagine each of these boxes represent, we're thinking that each of these boxes represents the shape of a head or the model of a head. All converging into different and random vanishing planes. Now this is where we want to be. So what you should do now is try to look at where you are on this scale. Are you here, 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 or here? And wherever you are, try to do more practice there and try to graduate to the next level. This will help you massively when it comes to structuring the head and rotating it and creating it from scratch. I can add a head right now, right here. Because I've done so many of these. If this is the bottom plane here, I'm imagining that I'm looking at the bottom of the chin. There's a neck here. This is the side plane. This will heavily interpret, this will heavily seep into your work and confidence when it comes to creating head. So I think that's all for cubes. Now let's move into spheres, and we'll gradually move from sphere to the Loomis method, which is very important when it comes to proportions of the face. The human head has structure, but at its core, it is a rounded form. So being able to draw and manipulate spheres will help us more accurately construct head from different angles, like so. And drawing a circle, and a sphere is just a circle with volume, so like so. So with that said, let's get into the Loomis method. So here's how to use the Loomis method, breaking down into 4 steps. Now I'm going to go over this in real time and explain what each of these steps mean. So just follow along and I'll try to break them down into something that's manageable and understandable. And step 1 is drawing a circle. This will serve as the base of the skull. Now, since the skull isn't a perfect sphere, we'll need to chop off the sides. And with this circle, this body is currently in a 2-dimensional space. What we'll need to do is create contour lines to show that this body is existing in a 3D space. So what that looks like is wrapping horizontal lines and vertical and horizontal lines around it. Now, where these 2 axes line meet, that will be the center of this body, right? So this is the vertical contour line and this is the horizontal. This point here will be the front of our face or our head. Now, because the side of the skull is very flat, we'll need to chop off this area. Just a little bit of the sides. When we chop this area off like this, the shape of the ball that's supposed to go outward will have to come down abruptly to show the flatness of the form, right? And this horizontal contour lines that should extend outward like this will have to go straight like this, just to show that this form is no longer rounded, but instead it's flat. So now we have our side plane and our front plane. Now, this area where the vertical and horizontal contour lines intersect, we will draw a vertical line downward. This line will be for the front of the face that separates the face into left and right parts. Now, the end of this line will be where our chin will be, but I won't draw it yet. This is just a guideline. Now, we'll draw another vertical line down from the side of the face. This will be where our jawline will start. So the top of the area where we cut the circle will be our hairline. So right here, this is the piece we cut off here. So the top of that piece will be where our hairline will start. So the area from the center of the face to the hairline will roughly get the distance and then bring it downward. So this will roughly measure here to here and then apply that same distance for here to here. This will be for our brow line to our forehead line. or our hairline. Now here to here, let me extend that a little bit more, will be from our brow line to the nose, and then we'll bring it down once more to find the chin. Depending on the character you're drawing, you can extend this down a little bit more. So I'll just keep it here. And then from the side of the face, we'll extend these lines downward and find the chin. So this is basically the front of the head, and this is the side plane. This is the front plane. We'll add a neck real quick so it doesn't look like the head is floating. Now what I'll do here is lower the opacity, because we now have our structure of the head, and then start adding in details. Let's start by putting in our eyebrows. And then the side, and then our nose. So the distance, this spot here will be from our eye. So the nose sits halfway between the eye line and the chin. So I'll put that right here. And then the eyes. And then the mouth also sits halfway between the nose and the chin. I think I've overextended this chin. I might bring it up a little bit to this point. So this should be roughly the halfway point. Yeah, I should put the chin somewhere around here. And this is the area for the zygomatic bone. And I'll just, yeah. The most important part is just getting the front of the face right. So and then just using the base and the area between, so from the brow to the nose, this area here, if we extend it to the side of the face, that should be roughly the length of the ear. So from the top of the brow to the bottom to the nose. And then it's just as simple as tracing over the structure which we've already laid out previously, adding the jaw. Yeah, I think I made that chin a little bit too soft. So we want to make sure we give enough distance between the front of the face and the side of the face. Let's try another example. So we're starting off with another circle, right? Horizontal and vertical and horizontal axis line to show the center of the face. So this should be the center of the brow line. Extend the vertical line downward, which will be the center line where our nose and mouth will sit. chop off the side of the cranium and show the form. This line here will be the starting point for our jaw, and this line, the top of this cutoff point for the cranium, will be our hairline, so we'll extend it this way. Now the distance between the brow and the hairline, we'll try to replicate that and find where the bottom of our nose will sit, so roughly here or a little bit higher. And then we'll do the same to find the bottom of the chin, so roughly here, and then extend the line downward from the side and connect it to the bottom of the chin. At the neck, and the cheekbone. I always struggle finding exactly where these cheekbones will go, but I think I'll figure it out soon enough. I think it should be where the cheekbones will sit. Try to put it close to the nose, and then get the temple in to show a clear separation between the front and side of the face. And then next is just to lower the opacity and add those details. The center line is our brow. Forehead. And then this is the base of our nose. And then halfway between the bottom of the nose and chin is where the mouth will sit. Maybe give him a stronger jaw. I think like anything, the Loomis method, you'll get better at it with practice. As long as you know where the proportions, what the proportions are, and where the placement of the feature should be, you can draw almost anybody. Body, and just like before, the ear is roughly between the distance of the brow line and the nose, so here, and just add some squiggly lines for the ear and complete the rest of the head. And that's just about it. I hope this explanation was clear, but feel free to reach out to me if it wasn't. I'll try to make a better video explaining it. So let's go on to the next thing, shall we? Now, Using these three circles, I want to demonstrate how to draw the front, side, and three-quarter view. So let's get into it. So first things first is to chop off the sides here, and then get that center line going through it. Since this is a straight on view, we can get away with just using straight lines. And now the distance from the center line to the top of the ball, halfway through it is where we can find the hairline. And now if we measure the distance between the hairline and this cross here, we can break that same distance down to find the bottom of the nose. And now between the hairline, what we want to do is separate the face into thirds. So 1, 2, this is for the bottom of the nose, and 3, 4, the chin. One line for the chin. And then bring the side of the jaw down a little bit and connect it to the chin. And attach the neck, and now we roughly have our head shape. I'm going to erase the side of the head to give us something that looks more like a head. And now it's time to put in the rest of our features. So the distance between the brow and the nose is where our ear will sit. Halfway between our nose and chin, I think I overextended that chin, but I guess that's fine. Halfway between our nose and chin is where our lip will be, our mouth will be. And then proportion wise, you can fit in 5 eyes between the head from a straight on view. So, and there's about an eye width distance between both eyes. And then this is our brow. And draw a line for the nose. And that's about it. I will come back and refine this a little bit more, but for now we just want to get our shape, a rough shape of a head. So same thing, the side of the head, that cutoff point will be that's in the middle of the skull, and then those bands wrapping around it to show the center, and then this vertical line here. And now same thing as before, the distance between the cross and the top of the ball, halfway through it is our hairline. Sometimes I also like to use the top of the cutoff point to determine where my hairline will be, and you might get it a little bit lower than where the actual hairline will be, but I guess we put it halfway in between both points. So measure the same distance between the hairline and the cross, that is our brow line. Extend that downward, we'll get our nose. I think that should be around here. And same thing again, measure it and extend it downward. That should be our chin. Jawline here, extend it inwards. and attach the neck. Now we've constructed a side view. Again, proportion wise, the space between the brow and nose is where our ear will sit, and from the side view, the ear will usually sit in the center of the head. The nose will come out like this, and so the mouth halfway is where our mouth will be. And I'll also come back and refine this a little bit more. And one thing I also like to do is draw a line from the top of the circle of the from the top of the sides that we chopped off, just to separate the front and side plane of the head. I've forgotten the actual measurements for getting this line, but I just try to extend this line from the top of the temple all the way to the chin. So this will be our side plane of the face, and this will be the front plane. Same thing here from the top to the chin. Just extend this arc a little bit. And let's do the 3/4. I think the most important thing for using when it comes to drawing the Loomis method is just getting that cross point, that center point. So this is our vertical axis line and our horizontal axis line going like this. This is the middle point, and we'll extend this line downward for the base of our chin. Now from here to the top, from this middle brow line to the top, halfway between it will be our hairline, and I'm going to chop off the sides for the side of our face, the cranium. So I'll extend this line again, taking that same measurement from here to here, extend it downwards. This should be bottom of our nose. Extend it one more time. Should be our chin. I think I might have gone a bit more over the measurements, but that's fine. Be our chin. Extend it out. Connect it to the side of the face. Same thing with the jaw. Bring the jaw to about halfway between the nose and the chin, and connect it. Neck will go around here, and now it's just about separating the face into, or the head into, third. First one is for our forehead, second our nose and eyes, and the third is for our mouth. And then halfway in between the nose and the mouth is, and the chin is where our mouth will sit. Cheekbone right here. For the 3/4 view, we'll need to extend this out a bit more, and then the space between our brow and nose line is where our ear will sit. And now we've just, let me bring this line down to show the side of the face, side plane. And now we've properly constructed the head from the front, side, and 3/4 view. So now let me go ahead and add a little bit more of the features of the face and go over some proportional guides. Now, right now it's just a case of going over the construction and guidelines that we've made and cleaning things up a little bit more and refining it with our style. So I'm gonna go with a typical anime looking nose. No, I think I'll go with something more. that's fine. And a common mistake is making the eyes too big. Remember, we should be able to fit about 5 eyes across the width of the head. But if you're going for an anime look, I guess you can just settle with making them huge or crazy looking. But so for a normal looking face, the eyes aren't supposed to be too big. And when drawing eyes, you just have to get a feeling for what they should look like. Making the board. Brows. I always have a hard time placing eyebrows. Yeah, I think that looks good. Should be where our cheekbones sit. And usually the lip, the mouth should be, if you divide the space between the nose and the chin into thirds, the first third is usually where the mouth should be, but I like to make my mouth go lower than that because I like to draw my characters with fuller lips. And roughly the edge of the lips should align with the inner corners of the eyes, so something like this. Or I think the edge of the lip should align with the center of the eyes, so yeah, something like this. And the width of the nose should align with the inner corner of the eyes. And don't forget that the head will actually go slightly behind the ear from a front view. And also I always struggled with finding where to extend the jaw to the chin from. So what I usually do now is just draw a straight line down from the ear, and just at the base of the lip is where I'll start pulling it towards the chin, and that has seemed to work so far for me. I haven't been called out yet for that, so I guess it must be right. And then give him a beefy neck. Yep, I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and do the side view. Now, let's not forget that from the side view, the forehead will actually protrude forward a bit like this, and then cave in to show this hollow region that the eye socket will sit. So I have to get this shape right. And then the nose also will protrude forward and then come in. The nostril will sit at the base of the nose, and the eyes should start around the edge of the nostrils. Same thing with the brow. And then the mouth will be halfway between the nose and chin. Jaw will come all the way down to the bottom of the lip and connect to the chin. Just taking measurements here and here. Just trying to make sure everything aligns. I think I made his mouth a little too small, but I think that's okay. That's passable. Now for the side view, and same as before, head will come out. The forehead will come out, and then cave in a little bit, and then come out again for the cheek. Jaw. And getting the three-quarter view getting the three-quarter view right just takes practice, because there are some things that you only see when you're in the thick of it, when you're doing it. Now, what we want to do is get comfortable orienting this circle, these spheres in perspective, and accurately plotting out the front of the spheres and the side planes. So an exercise that you should try out is picking the direction of the sphere and cutting off the sides, wrapping around it, and just clearly showing the direction of the sphere. If you have no problem doing this, then you can move on to picking one angle and practicing the Loomis method from that angle. So maybe a front, side, or three-quarter angle. Then you just solely practice from drawing in that angle. That should strengthen your understanding of the Loomis method a bit more. And so let me talk about my sketching and line art technique, since I get asked about this a lot. The brush I use is my AP brush. It's nothing special. It's just a round brush with some modifications, and my brush pressure and smoothness setting is this. I sketch with a light hand, so I don't really put much pressure on this on my pen. So this is my pressure curve, and so this is something you should experiment with and find yours. If you have a heavy-handed sketching or liner technique, then you might need to adjust this accordingly. But just practice with this until, and experiment with it until you get something you're comfortable with. So I'm going to make a sketch now and talk you through my sketching process. So one thing about my sketching is I usually use straight lines, and I know a lot of people who are comfortable using curves like these, but to get a shape like this, I just prefer to go with straight lines. And next you can see that I am not, to get from this point to this point, I'm not just going with little chicken scratches like this. I'm trying to make bold swooping strokes, so like these, and sometimes I leave these gaps in between, and these are just for areas that I don't feel like filling in. And overall, I'm just trying to get a feel for the shape that I'm going for. And I think if I really think about it, this getting a liner technique or getting comfortable doing line work or sketching is just something you get with a lot of repetition and feeling comfortable adding your own patterns and swagger to drawings. And I like to do these double strokes. I don't know, it's just something I enjoy doing. But really quickly you can see that the form of what we're trying to represent is already taking place, and I don't like to zoom in too quickly, so I can stay out and observe the overall shape of what we're working on. And once that's acceptable, I will lower the opacity and go to a new layer, and sometimes I'll zoom in to get those finer details like in the eyes. And I always pick a focal point to put most of my details, so I won't have the same level of details and attention as on the outside as I would on the inside. So on the inside, I will try to have darker lines, and more details. And also, any area where you have more lines going across, or just basically you emphasize on with more lines, the attention of the viewer will be directed towards that area. So if you know how to utilize your line hierarchy, You can have more lines where you want the viewer to look and less line where you don't want attention to be. So since I want more attention on his face, I'm adding more lines and more details here. And it also helps to draw what you like and what you're comfortable drawing. I don't show this a lot, but I actually draw a lot of gorillas. Gorillas are my favorite animals. I have a whole sketchbook filled with gorilla drawings, but that's just from my private viewing experience. So if you're drawing what you like, you'll have an easier time finishing a drawing that you start. So just get comfortable drawing what you like, and eventually the skills and techniques will follow. I think I'll give him some eyebrows for personality. And that's just about it for my line art secrets in quotes. It just took a lot of repetition to get to where I'm comfortable. So if you're having trouble with line art, just try to I guess get comfortable doing it. I don't think that's really advised, but if you're having trouble with line art, just try to focus on doing line work and what aspects of your line art you don't like, and try to improve on it. It's really a hands-on approach to fixing your line work. There's no other quick fix to line work, really. Yeah, I think that's about it. Now let's get back into drawing the head. Now let's find the similarities between these four images here, so we can always use that to keep our own drawings in check. And the first one is, in a standard rule of third, the face should be divided into equal thirds. So here, so this distance will be from the nose to the mouth, and here will be from the brow to the nose, right? So but in perspective, these measurements get distorted slightly. So as you can see, the distance between the top third, the middle third, and the bottom third are not equal. So it looks like between the middle third and the top, the distance has shrunk a bit. And that's a standard rule of perspective, in that objects closer to us will appear bigger and objects far away will appear smaller. So if we think of drawing a cylinder in perspective, it will look something like this, as you can see. And if we relate that to the face here, this underside will be the chin and the face will start to recede accordingly into perspective. And if we can push that long enough, it will eventually get to a place where they convert together and become a point. So when drawing in perspective, it's good to remember that the measurement will get distorted slightly. So in an upward tilt, we'll see more of the bottom third than we would the top, right? So the space between the bottom of the nose and the chin will be bigger than the space between the nose and the brow line, and so on. Now the second one is we will see the underside of the chin a lot more. So depending on the angle we're looking at, we will see more or less, but in an upward tilt we will always see the underside of the chin. Here's a better example. The tilt is not as extreme here, but we still see a fair bit of the underside of the chin. And in an extreme tilt here, we're seeing mostly the whole jaw structure and neck and her neck. So depending on the angle and the tilt of the character, you might see less or more of the jaw structure. So, and then thirdly, the ears will always drop below the brow line and align more with the jawline, so like so. Because in a standard third measurement, so 1, 2, 3, brow line, nose line, and chin, the ears will usually fall between the brow line and the nose line. But when the head gets tilted, we can see that the ear now fall closer to the jawline than it is with the brow line, and that is because of the angle of the head. That's because of the tilt. So let me show you with a box. If we represent the head with a box, so this is the side plane and this is the front plane. Now the ear, which should be aligned with this middle third here, will now the plane will now the planes of the ear should converge following the side plane of the box, so something like this. So now the ear will sit. The ear still sits in place, it just depends on the perspective we're looking at. So if we look at it from the front again, this is the box, we're seeing more of the underside, and if we make it transparent so we can see through it, it should look like this. Now these are the planes for the ear. This is the front plane here, right? So this same plane, on the plane where the ear will sit, it should converge downward, so it should look as if the ears are now back here. So the tilt causes this illusion whereby it looks like the ear has gone lower, but it's still on the same plane. Just because of the angle of the tilt, your ears will now look lower. So this is another hack to always make sure that your characters look like they're at an upward tilt. So having the brow line higher than the ear and showing more of the jaw and underside of the chin will just automatically make it look as if the character head is tilted upward. And it's just that easy. So once you can remember these two things, having the ears lower and closer to the jaw and showing more of the underside of the face, you will easily show that your character at an upward tilt or the shot is from a low angle. Now let's talk about a third thing that I have noticed, and that is the distance between the brow and where the eyeball starts is even greater, but this is depending on the character and how pronounced their brow ridge is. So if it's someone with more protruding brow like this distance here should be greater than someone who has a more flat looking face. But that is something that we should also keep in mind, that when we're drawing from a low angle and the brow goes here, we should not automatically just put the eye here, because the eyes sit in a socket. So we should draw them more sunken in, so a little bit lower than the eyes, than the brow. And then finally, depending on how intense the angle is, there might be an overlap where we don't even see the nose bridge at all we see our nostrils. So if we were to apply that here, we might have the nose on the same line as the eyes and just show nostrils, or show a bit of, like so, like this, show a bit of the nose bridge and then have the nose show the nostril. So it all just depends on how intense the angle we're looking at it from is. So just to recap, and then I'll also go over how to use the Loomis method and to work on this. Just to recap, the bottom third should be more spaced out than the top two, and have the ear closer to the jaw and show a bit more of the chin, and have the brow here, show the underside of the nose, and just like a cylinder, right? If you notice, I keep using this type of curves, and that is because of the angle that we are looking at it. So if we have a cylinder like this and we want to draw contour lines showing volume of the cylinder, the ellipses should look like upwards. The curves of the ellipses should be upwards like this, so like a disc. It wouldn't make sense to have a downward facing ellipse. That would just totally look wrong. So keep in mind the curve of your lines. To use the Loomis method, we should always think of the head as a ball and a jaw attached to it. So if we can break and simplify the head down into these two forms, we will have an easier time showing the tilt of it. Just a ball and a head attached to it. And then second thing to keep in mind is the brow line and center line. The center line, which is this vertical line that runs from the middle of the head to the chin, and the horizontal line, the horizontal axis, will help show the tilt and place of, help us place the eyes and nose. This horizontal, this brow line will curve more dramatically depending on the angle. So if we have a straight on view here, the center line should be pretty much straight, and the more intense the angle gets, the higher the curvier the horizontal line, axis line will get. So just like those lines you see on a globe. But the vertical line, that is the center line, will almost always stay straight. The horizontal line is what bends and curves even more depending on the angle and the tilt. So let's use the Loomis method and draw an upwards tilt. We'll start with this one. First things first is to place our ball. Yeah, that's good. And then, as usual, we take out the sides. And then wrap our horizontal brow line, and then our vertical center line. So right now this is the center of the face, right? Now if we bring this line downward, and this is also another hack that I've been using. I think I spoke about this earlier on, but the bottom of where we chop the head off, we could use it to find the bottom of our nose, like we did with finding the hairline earlier on. So let's try to use this landmark. So as an example, if this is our ball and this is the side of the ball that we cut off, I will use here to find the bottom of our nose, and here to find the top, to find the hairline. So, and then in between it will be our brow line. We've drawn in two of our thirds, so the top and the middle third. So I just like to use the bottom of this the area that we chopped off to find our nose line, the middle brow line, and then the top for our hairline. So because the ear is on the same line as the brow line and the nose line, it should look something like this. You know, this will come down here and this will come down here. Same with this. So the ear should be somewhere around here. And then because of the extreme nature of this tilt, the third going from the nose to our chin should be longer than from the nose to the brow line. So if this is the distance here, I will roughly extend it a bit more to somewhere around here. And I'll start by putting in the chin. As you can see, this is bigger than this, and so on. Start by putting in our chin. Like I said before, just try to divide the face into front and side planes. And as you can see from the jaw here, the jaw comes a little bit inward. So this is the structure of the jaw from the bottom, right? And this is what it looks like from the front. I think it's important to understand how the jaw shape looks so we can draw it from any angle. As you can see, we will be seeing a lot of the underside of the chin, and then the neck usually goes in behind the ears. And that's about it. We've created the structure of the upwards tilt, and now all we need to do is lower the opacity and add those details. So like we talked earlier on, there should be some spacing between the brow and the eyes. And the brow comes down like this. And from a downwards tilt, from an upwards tilt, the jaw will appear to be a little bit shorter than it is. So we won't see, for example, if this is the circle, this is the length of the jaw, right? But from a downward angle, the jaw appears to have reduced its length. I think I'll give him hair because we can't exactly see where the hairline starts from. Should be around here. And again, from a downwards tilt, from an upwards tilt or from a downwards angle, we should see more of the nostril. So, like so. And then the mouth, because we know from the front the mouth should be something like this with lips. But from a downward angle, this line would get curved more dramatically, so it will look like a C, an inverted C curve. You might not even need to draw that chin sometimes, but if you want, you can just add it like this. And we'll see more of the length of the neck when the shot is from below. So as long as we just have those things in place, that is the eyebrow line being higher than the ear, showing more of the bottom of the nostril, and then showing the chin, we will almost always be able to show that this is an upward tilt or low angle shot. Let me do this one. Even from the side, it's pretty much the same thing. We will see more of the nostril, we will always see more of the nostril, the underside of the chin, and the ear will appear to be will appear to be lower than the brow line. So this, but it's still on the same line. It's just a change of angle and perspective. I can put this in a box even. So if you have a good understanding of how to draw boxes, a lot of this should be easy when you start to apply those concepts. This is the center line. So let me draw this with the Loomis method. Again, we're starting with a circle. Let me get a bit of, well, no cheating. Okay, so as usual, we find the horizontal tilt, that is the brow line, and wrap it around the ball. Find the cutoff points, that is the side of the head, and chop that off. So this should go something like this. And then find the center line. I think I have over exaggerated the tilt, but you know, we can go with it. So we have our vertical line and our horizontal axis lines to show the direction and tilt of the head, right? This is the most important part, just showing the direction. And then from the bottom of the cutoff point of the side of the head, we can extend that out to find our nose line. Then from the top, we can find our hairline, and then show a little bit of distortion. So this spacing right here will make it a little bit longer to show the jaw and the chin. And then just connect the chin, the jawline to the chin. Adding this bit of skin here. And then the neck. I apologize for the noise if you can hear a dog barking. Side of the face here. And that's our construction done. And now to add in the details. Find our brow line here, nose, show a bit of the bottom of the nostril. Give a bit of spacing between the brow and the eyes. Yeah, let me give him his hair. So what we need to do is always keep in mind showing the bottom of the nostril, bottom of the chin, and showing this angle of the ear pointing downward, being lower than the brow line and nose line. I think that's all. So let me go to the downwards tilt. Now the reverse will be true with the downwards tilt because we are looking at our subject from the top. So we will mostly be seeing the areas of the face that are facing that angle. So those are the top of the head, the forehead, the brow line, the bridge of the nose, the top of the lip, and maybe a bit of the chin. So, and the lower the features get, the more foreshortening will be applied to them. So the brow line will be curved upwards. The brow line will be curved upwards like so. So it wraps around the face and then curve upward to follow the shape of the ball. So same with the nose line. It wraps around the form and curves upward. So that's why with the ear being on the same angle as the brow and nose line, the ear will look as if it moves upward. So with an upward tilt, the ear will move downwards relative to the brow and nose line, and with downwards tilt, the ear would move downward relative to the brow and nose line. So like so and like so. I think that's the most important part here. And we'll see more of the top of the head, and here we'll see more of the underside of the chin. And so the features will compress vertically since we're looking at it from the top. So just like our cylinder earlier, if this is the top of the cylinder, when the top is closer to us, the larger it will be, and the areas further away from us will compress downward. So the top of the cylinder will be bigger than the bottom of the cylinder, but it's still the same size. Just because of the perspective applied, it will look as if it has compressed vertically since we are looking at it from top. And the mouth will also curve downward, where the bottom lip will be showing more of, because if this is our point of view and we are seeing here the lip, the top part of the lip will be visible and the top of the bottom lip will be visible, but we will not see the underside of the bottom lip. We will only see more of the top side of the bottom lip, since that is where our eye level is, or that is where our eye will hit. And as we can see here, the jaw elongates downward. We see less of the side of the jaw, and let me take this off here for a second. The eyebrow and eyelid will overlap the eyes, and you will see very little of the eyes. In fact, depending on the eye level, you will almost see just something like this, just suggestions of a caved in form where you barely see the eye. So from a top view, Either the eyelids cover the eye, so something like this. This is the eye and this is the brow. The eyelid will usually cover the eyeballs, so we barely see the eye, or if it gets extreme enough, we won't see anything at all. And finally, the neck and chin is less visible because of the overlap from the head. So from this, you will barely see anything from here like this, because this form here is covering the sides of this. So now let me draw out the Loomis method, draw the downward tilt with the Loomis method in real time, so we can just have a sense of what we're talking about. Using this cylinder as an example, if this is the bottom of our cylinder and this is the top, we can see that the bottom is exposed and bigger than the top, and this contour lines will compress more vertically upwards the higher up we go. So let me show you something like this. So like this disc, for example, at eye level it will be almost flat and horizontal, and higher up, or the more we change the angle or tilt of this ellipse right here, the more it will start to take on the shape of a disc, to the point where it will be a circle. So that's what we're talking about here. This is an upward tilt and this is a downward tilt. On a downward tilt, these contour lines will compress vertically. They compress downward more to show the tilt of the form. So what we want to focus on when the head is tilted up is showing how that lower third here expands relative to the middle and upper third. We want to show more of the underside of the nose, we want to show more of the underside of the chin, and we want to show that the ears will drop below the brow line and align more with the jawline. So let me just draw it again. From a front-on perspective, we want to just focus on cutting the side of the head, because remember, if this, just like a cylinder, it will converge upward, we want to also show that compression of the volume. So this horizontal axis line, I want to show that compression, and the vertical axis line will be straight. We want to show the distance and the expansion of the lower third, that is the jawline. Put in the chin, and the ear, we want to show that the ear has dropped closer to the jawline, and bring the jaw down a little bit more, connect it. We want to show the underside of the chin and then attach the neck. So it's just about showing the relative distortion in those third because of the perspective. So brow here, eyes here, nose, we want to see the underside, and lip. Let me draw it a little bit more detailed now. Very highly compressed horizontal axis line to show the tilt. sides of the head. Then this is the nose line. I want to show it more compressed. Then this is the vertical center line. So this is our brow, and then this is our hair, where our hairline will start. And then I want to show there's more of a distance and distortion between the middle third and the final third. So around here should be okay. Bring the chin, the jaw down a little bit from the cut off side of the cranium, and then attach it. Show a bit of the underside of the neck. Attach the neck, and then clean up the side of the cranium that we cut previously. Show how the ears have been moved down relative to the brow line. And then we can add our details now, like the brow. The eyes will not go directly here, but we give it some distance between the brow and the eyeballs. Using these concave lines to show that the form is moving away from us. And then add the nose. See more of the nostril and maybe some of the bridge of the nose. And our proportions still have to align roughly, so the nose will end in the inner corner of the eyes, and then again the lip with this will align roughly with the center of the eyes. So with an upward tilt, what we are trying to show is compression of the placement of the thirds and showing more of the chin and ears, just like that. You can even just quickly rough this out using a couple of steps. These lines for the thirds, show the chin, show the ear down here, and that's it. Show the nose, eye. And then in a downward tilt, the reverse appears to be true, whereby the upper third expands and appear longer since it's closer to us, the viewer, and the lower third, that is the area closest to the chin, will compress and appear to be smaller as it recedes into the vanishing point. So like this, as it recedes, it will appear to be smaller, and the ear will look like they shift higher, aligning with the eyes above the head towards the top of the head. So let me give a little demonstration here. I think the hard part about the Loomis method is just finding this cross point between your center line and the horizontal axis and the brow line. That is the difficult part, at least for me. But once you just get this part, getting the rest of the placement is very easy. So this is the brow line, and around here will be the hairline, and just a little lower will be the nose line. And again, because of foreshortening, the distance won't be equal. So here, this will be the chin, and then the jaw, the size of the jaw will not be as visible, so we can cut in like this from the cheekbones. Actually cut off the side of the head, and then the ear, since they will wrap around like this, that will appear to be up here, closer to the top of the head. And so we're seeing more of the top part of the head and less of the bottom of the head. And then when it comes to adding the details, again, there will be overlap of the eyebrow covering the eyes. There will be overlap of the nose covering most of the area above the lip, and then we will mostly see the bottom lip here. Hey, this is a cool looking character. Then see the hairline. Maybe he's going bald just a little bit. Yeah. Then we'll see more of the top part of the head. Again, sorry for the noise. And then we'll not see, the neck will barely be visible, so mostly see the shoulders and then where the collarbone comes out from. From the top angle, it's mostly just one of the things to be aware of is overlap. Sorry about that. So this is the top angle, this is the top downwards tilt, and this is the upward tilt or character looking up. So let me move on to how to get the likeness of a character or a person next. In this segment, we are going to focus on how to achieve likeness and adding those small details that can make your portraits feel alive. And I'll show you how those tiny adjustments to the facial features can completely change the character's look, and how to add personality through shading and detail. And if you watch football, you probably already know who these are, but I wanted to make it in this semi-realistic style, because if I try to make a realistic portrait drawing, we might be here all day. So this level of realism might take 10-20 minutes, but it's enough. It has enough detail to show who we're trying to get the character drawing to look like, without going too much into realism. And even with my own personal work, I'm trying to stay away from hyper-realism or getting the characters to look too realistic. But let's get into it now. Now, I already made a different video about getting likeness where I drew Robert Pattinson, but I didn't feel like this was looking very true to his likeness, so I want to give it another go with this, and I'll be drawing him and then explaining my process, maybe in a voiceover after the drawing or during the drawing. But I think I'll just make it after the drawing. But I think this video has dragged on long enough, so I'll get into this. If it looks good, then I'll use this video, and if it doesn't, then I'll just use the previous video. So let's get into drawing him. What I want to focus on is showing how the final third here is longer than the middle third, and because his jaw is open, his mouth is open, so his jaw has dropped down, and I want to show the shape of his eyebrow and this socket here, how deep it is. But let me get to drawing him and then I will explain my process. Now, when it comes to getting likeness, it really is just about tiny proportional changes and arrangements. You see, the jump from here to here is just trying to add those features in the correct places, because this is the base of our head, and basically 99%, unless someone has a clear deformity, the structure of the skull will almost always be the same. On there are some people that fall outside the basic average structure of the skull, but for the average person and for most people and most things that you'll be drawing, the structure and base is and will always remain the same. So the hardest part is just getting the base structure accurate. You want to try to focus most of your power here, translating this reference into this rough structure, because if you can get the angle right and the placement of the features going from this base to the finished drawing will be very easy, because as you can see right here, this middle drawing here, I think it's looking like Nicolas Cage, but the difference between this and this is actually just adding these features like his beard and goatee and adding his hair, and as you can see, that made a whole of a difference. Is starting, it just transformed this character, this drawing, to the reference. So minding things like your spacing, so right here, the spacing between the eyebrow to the temple, it's very important to just watch those tiny movement and placements of features, the distance between the nose and top of the lip, how wide or how far down the jaw is open or placed, the distance between the side of the face and the front of the face, and that's just it. And as you can tell from watching the video of me drawing him, at least 70% of the drawing and construction phase is just trying to get those placements right, because at first it will honestly not look like what you're trying to draw, but if you know that your placement and construction is proper, then you can just go ahead and then just fine-tune those details a bit, and then eventually it will start to look like the character. If I apply color to this character now and do some shading, I can get him to look exactly like the reference, but I'm trying to stay away from realism right now. I'm trying to go towards more semi-realism, so I think moving forward I'll be making most of my characters look a little bit towards the cartoony side. But what I'm trying to say is, this is actually not difficult. You just have to go through a bunch of, not even a lot, maybe 5-10 studies, and then you start to see similarities between what you're drawing. Everyone has cheekbones, everyone has eye sockets, and most people have hair. So if you can just find these landmarks, put them accordingly, then for example, if I were to raise his eyebrows, higher, I can actually get him to start looking like a whole different character just from changing a few things. And that's the most important thing when it comes to getting likeness, just trying to match the characteristics and placement of the features to the reference that you're looking at. And then if you can do that accurately, you can easily you will have a much easier time getting your characters to look like who you're drawing. So at the end of the day, tiny adjustments, big changes. Tiny adjustments will make huge changes. And I think that's about it for the video or the course. I hope I haven't dragged this too long. I will try to edit this to be under 2 hours, but thank you for watching, and I plan to make more videos like this going forward. Take care.